introduction, if you look at the program, it says Eulogy by Joey Petronio. And while Joey was a little embarrassing as a teenager, I sort of like it now. But it says that I'm a cousin of Lorraine, and that is certainly true, and I think it's wonderful that one of my youngest cousins, Christine's daughter, got listed in here, because I don't know that I'm a cousin of Lorraine except for her. I have an auntie Laura, though, who's really awesome. And I have an Uncle David, too, that's really awesome. But by way of introduction, I moved here. My mother moved my brother and I here from Minnesota in 1967. And so I grew up with this family in Denver. I have a huge family. Anybody that knows our family knows that there's a huge family in Minnesota, too, that I'm intensely proud of and also close to. But this is where I grew up. So I didn't have two things that I learned. People ask me, like, oh, so you're their cousin, and how is that connected? And I learned things like, okay, you're like the third cousin, 3 times removed. I don't know any of that. My cousins don't come with numbers. They come in numbers. So, yes, and I have aunts and uncles. And I don't have any aunts and uncles in-laws. That's also something we don't do. But that's who I am, and that's why I'm up here today. So thank you for, what a testimony. I didn't think that communion line was ever going to end. I know there's people on the street, literally on the street of this church, and that I know Uncle David would say it's a real testimony to a man's character and how well he was liked. That for those that, by the number of folks that would show up for a funeral, and I think, and I know that he's very proud of the congregation he has here today. You know, the obituary does a great job of giving you the stats, and those have been talked about today. We know that he celebrated 50 great years with a wonderful woman and 7 children and 18 grandchildren and all that. What it doesn't tell you, though, is the hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of other people that he touched. Present company at this podium included. And many of you in here, or you wouldn't be here. May the 6th, 1944, was a very special day. And it was a good day for the world. And it is something we should not forget about. So we know, first and foremost, Uncle David was a family man. Okay, got that? Was he any good at it, you might wonder? Well, I'll tell you, if I was in a court of law right now, I would just say, give you Exhibit A, the first 6 rows of this church, and the case would be closed. He was very, very good at it. In fact, he was the best, world class at it. When I was coming up, my wife and I had just gotten married. I didn't have a whole lot of, every father, I think brand new father's pretty nervous about being a dad. So I saw him, and he's a pretty darn good one. So I said to him, hey, Uncle David, I got to ask you, what's your secret? You have 7 kids. Now, out of 7, he should have at least had 1 or 2 that were sort of on the bubble. I mean, no question. The fact is, he didn't and doesn't. All 7 are terrific human beings. And that is just amazing to me. So I asked him that, and I told him that. He goes, you know what, Joe? He said, I got a simple, you know what, Joey, he said. I got a simple formula. I love them unconditionally, and I put faith in their lives. That's it. So I went away feeling pretty good about that. I thought, I got it. I got the formula. I got the secret formula. It's going to be easy. Then you got to unpeel that a little bit. Putting faith in your life isn't dropping your kids off for mass and picking them up later when you go to the donut shop. It's living the faith. And as you heard here today, there's nobody that lived it any better with any more conviction. And you love your children unconditionally. That sounds pretty easy to say, but you have to demonstrate that. And he certainly did that as well. The nearest I can calculate is he's probably spent over 300,000 hours watching his kids and his grandkids at sporting events. You do the quick math on that, I think it comes out to about 14 24-hour days, 14 years of 24-hour days. And if I'm rounding off, I'm not off by much, for those of you that know. He's an absolutely incredible man, absolutely incredible father, and he believed it. And he practiced it. And he was meticulous about what he did. He took into every detail and he executed. And that's just the way he was. We were talking yesterday, the kids and I were sitting around and we were recanting stories and came out about how meticulous Uncle David could be. And it showed up in his cars. And he always had a clean car. And the kids were like, oh, you dreaded it when Dad jumped in your car, because especially the girls, it was always a mess, and he'd give them the business. But you always dreaded that, but he loved to have a clean car, and it just was who he was, and it got transformed into more than just his vehicles. That's how he lived his life. And in fact, yesterday it was funny, we were kind of talking, all of a sudden Lori disappeared. And then Lori comes back later, and she's like, hey Mom, do you have any, I need a towel, wipe off the car some more. They didn't get everything at the car wash. So I went out and I helped her. She goes, you know, she goes, the car wash guys are looking at me like I'm crazy. They know it's gonna rain. I know it's gonna rain, but I just wanted to do this for my dad. Because I know he would appreciate a clean truck today. So that's the kind of impact that he left, and that's the kind of care that he had. You know, one of the things that he certainly was too was somebody who gave of himself all the time. You know, you can judge a man's character not by what he does when nobody's looking. And he did it whether somebody was looking or whether they weren't. And Christine remarked on a story. She was a little girl, and when he'd stop and he saw a woman struggling with a stroller, trying to push a child in the stroller, and the wheel was cattywampus for whatever reason. So he stopped, and he gave her a ride to where she needed to go. And she was maybe too young. She just thought, wow, that's interesting. We've never done that before, Dad. But that's the kind of guy he was. He didn't do it because you were looking. He did it because it was right. And that teaches us all something very powerful. You know, he was an amazing coach. He coached for over 40 years. And we're told that it wasn't just the wins, and by the way, he had a lot of them. I want to say 4 straight parochial league championships, and so his ability at coaching was well-founded in terms of the win-loss column, there's no question. But perhaps what was even more important is what he taught in terms of character. He taught etiquette, he taught to be honorable, and he taught, above all else, sportsmanship, the right way to do it, to win graciously, and to lose with pride if that's what it's doing. But that's the kind of man we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. And many of you already know that, or you wouldn't be here. But he touched so many people's lives in such a positive and productive way that he's a real role model for all of us that know him. And if you didn't know him, all you have to do is talk to 7 of my dear cousins. And about 20 minutes is all it'll take in any conversation for you to realize the kind of impact he had. You know, Tommy recounts, a couple of things come to mind that I want to bring up. Tommy was talking about some of his teammates and buddies from years past that got coached by Uncle David, and how he still to this day will get comments from them on what he did for them, what it meant to them as they look back over time, and that's really powerful stuff. And it still comes out because he did it when no one else was looking. Social scientists tell us that there's an intelligence quotient. They call it emotional intelligence. And what it really means is you're really good at reading people. You can look at people, listen to them for a while, you understand them. Great salespeople have this talent. And also, great Samaritans have that talent. And that's how Uncle David used his. Although he's also very persuasive in his arguments and in his salesmanship. But yeah, very, very high emotional intelligence. He could feel you. And he could feel when something was wrong, and rather than just, yeah, that's too bad, that kid, kind of a lost soul. That wasn't the way he rolled. He made a difference. And he did it in a gentle and kind way, and he did it where it stuck. And that's really cool stuff. The other thing that struck me is, and I know they're here, and I don't want to call them out, but we're so blessed in this country, really around the world, to have amazing medical people. Our doctors and our nurses, our critical care people, they're amazing with what they do. We're blessed. We complain about healthcare, but at the end of the day, it's the best in the world. And it'll continue to be because of people like that. But I understand there's people here today. He was in that hospital for 2 weeks, most of which he wasn't conscious for. But that's the magnetism he had. They're here today because they're sad, and they want to be around his family. Medical professionals are trained not to get attached. They don't do their best work when they are, apparently. But you know what? That just tells you the magnetism and the personality, the force of the personality we're talking about. So in closing, I just want to say that go back to May the 6th, 1944. It was a special day in the world. It made the world just a little bit better. March 22nd, 2016, you'd say, well, maybe the converse is true. It was a sadder day, a worse day. And I'll grant you that for the sadness that Father was talking about earlier. But it doesn't have to be the end of what is a great legacy. And it doesn't have to be and won't be the end of an individual that made a difference in the world. Because if you're like me, and I know there's many of you here, if you're at all like me, you can do his honor by continuing to take it forward. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I invite you to do. And guess what? We know where Uncle David is. There's no question in my mind where he's at, and he's looking down. But we'll do his life justice by doing that. So that's my plan.